up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, also 2018. Yeah, the year is coming to an end, but I got that award in November, so I think I've got a year to enjoy it. 2018 award winner of the Innovation Award handed out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, this is, I call the place of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and we got some friends back. They're so busy. Like, I know they just left somebody and they just landed where they are right now. I got told a certain young lady that they're on their way. They're on their way. So they are here. And we have Beth. I should call it B squared. Beth and Bryan. B squared.
Nice.
B squared.
I
All right.
I actually like that.
All right.
We have B squared back talking about continuing our journey about converting religious shame to soulful intimacy. It's a 3-part series. We're at the second part. And we'd like to welcome back B2. How we doing?
We're great. B2 now. Okay.
B2,
We're
well,
good.
I don't know. B1, B2? B1.
But that like thing, one thing too, and the cat in the hat. And
Oh, yeah.
Wow, cat in a hat.
yeah.
Wow.
And there we get into Dr. Seuss, and there's a whole religious side to that. But anyway, another conversation.
Well, that's another conversation. Dr. Seuss and religion and sex. I think that make a great. I think Beth would be the best host for that.
I think I would.
Well, if you look at some of Dr. Seuss's original artwork, it's very sexual.
And the language sounds a little like me.
Yes, I think I'm going to write that down.
We'll go.
Beth. Write that down. I'm going to hold you to it. So you're not just going to get away with 3 conversations. There's already a 4th.
All right.
Love it.
Right. So you know what? Joking aside, for those who don't know who each of you are, can you give a little brief introduction for both of you?
Go ahead. You're first. Even though you're holding me.
Cat in the hat threw everything off. I know that.
I know. I got so excited by this. I'm Beth Ostander. I'm a pleasure coach. Once was in the world of accounting, quickly exited that. Well, not so quickly, but thankfully exited that. And I've been working in the area of coaching people how to be intimate with themselves and with their partners with zero shame. Bryan, B2.
That was it?
That was it. That's all I feel like saying tonight. I don't know. That's all I got.
Well, I'm not an accountant.
The other nerdy
career, an engineer, but still an engineer, And for those of those in Canada, I have my ring, my engineering ring.
Totally.
Little pink ring.
Yes, which is a total Canadian thing.
Oh.
It's not any other engineers in the world have it.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
that.
So if you didn't know something. And the ceremony was created by Rudyard Kipling. So give that little tidbit out there for now. But yes, I'm an engineer. Where was I? And
why do you talk about sex?
Because I love talking about sex. First was working with Beth as one of her clients, and now we look for opportunities to work together, and talking on these conversations. I mean, engineering still is part of what I am, and I'm an entrepreneur, have my own business, work in the energy field. That's where I do during the day, and by night, come on, have a great conversation.
Be careful now.
Have
Go
these
on.
great conversations, talk about stuff that people don't talk about in the, can be very stuffy energy world. Even though I was talking with one of my clients about this today.
Over rum.
Yeah. Well, I gave him the rum, but he didn't drink it. So anyway.
You took it.
Well, I gave him one yesterday that shared it with me. So I was happy about that one.
All right. Well, we had a great time on our first Epic Conversation, and I want to already thank Bobby, who was in for the first conversation back. We also are streaming this live now on the Get Vocal platform, and thank you to Get Vocal. They sent that out. They retweeted the information out to all their followers, and also thank you everyone who's watching on YouTube and also on Periscope. We left off last time. I don't remember. It was too much fun, but I know that you want to continue on with the conversation, so I'll let you go for it, and I'll just be filler as usual.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to place where we were at, and I think the main thing we were chatting about was who is affected by religion. I know that we were chatting about that a little bit anyway. That's what I took from it. And so I'll share, because I didn't, other than an accountant in the past, I grew up in Christian evangelical. That was my flavor of religion. And I grew up in a religious household. I actually, taught Sunday school, did the youth group, church camps, went to Bible college, married a youth pastor. I did the whole thing. I was in. It was my foundation. And so we talked a little bit about how there's degrees of affectedness. You can go back and listen to us chatting about that more if you want to go look at the first episode. Yeah, and then your flavor of religion.
Yeah, my flavor was Catholic. So didn't do the whole evangelical thing, but grew up being a altar boy with a family that was highly religious, an uncle that was a priest, left the priesthood to become married, which unfortunately. You talk about religion and some of the really great parts. This man deeply loves his religion, deeply loves being part of it, but also wanted to be married. And a friend of his that was in the seminary at the same time chose to go into the Anglican church, but he didn't. He remained true to his faith and being Catholic, but couldn't be a priest and be married. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, for me, it was growing up inside of that where things about intimacy was not talked about, from a religious standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. And I think also grew up a lot. By the time I hit my teenage years, it was my mom and my dad raising 5 of us. And it wasn't a conversation she had, especially with myself and my brother. So having these types of conversations, I always found, okay, I want to know more. I want to find out more about sex. I want to find out more about what it means in intimacy, and it just wasn't there and wasn't happening. And even in our lives today, it still isn't happening. So, and I go back to when you talk about religion, I was in an all-boys Catholic school for high school, Catholic school for all my elementary career. So even some of the messaging thing there in terms of what was bad, what was wrong around sex, it was... You grew up with this, okay, but you think sex is pleasurable, but there's guilt associated with it at the same time.
Okay, and I'm already have conversation pieces, so I'm not going to let them go.
Okay.
Bryan, you mentioned about messaging. Did the message cause a mess for both of you?
The one that I'll say did cause a mess for me, because I was reflecting on this the other day. There was this priest in high school, greatly admired a man. I loved all his religious classes. We used to talk about Satanism and rock and roll. We would try spinning records backwards for those of you that still remember records, right? To see if there was satanic stuff in there. So we'd have these great conversations. At the same token, he'd make statements like how masturbation was such a selfish act and you shouldn't be doing it. And I'm thinking, okay, here I am watching the Italian program on Channel 47 for those who go back, yes, I was masturbating. So you're enjoying this pleasurable feeling, but yet in the back of your mind thinking this is bad and wrong. And I mean, I got the same message from my mother. So that sort of messaging really messed you up because your feelings didn't match with what you thought you should be feeling, which is feeling this is evil and bad.
Yeah, it's a great question. I love it. For me, along the same line, early on, I was told to not touch myself, and I continued, but it was hidden, and so that started this messaging that I took to heart because this was what I believed too, right? So it started this confusion, this message of don't touch yourself, don't enjoy pleasure. Well, it wasn't even said that, just don't touch yourself. I was confused because the touching of self felt good. There was something natural, just like maybe, I was going to say scratching an itch. Isn't that a actual, that's such a stupid saying, but okay. So I keep moving my hair. Like that's something I feel like doing. So as a child, if there's a sensation that your body wants to feel, You just do it. You don't think about it. You're not trying to do something in particular. And so it became this confusion. Oh, my body wants this. Then my body likes it. And yet that's bad. And that continued in messaging of, there was the whole, the chastity belt. There were so many messages. The chastity belt thing, which is don't, save yourself, right? And then, wow, I could go through so many pieces. But
you got the time.
I got the floor. This is the thing. Okay.
And it's interesting. Ellie has a comment here. I think all those taboos around masturbation are a way that sexual predators used to commit that crime.
That's interesting. I would love you to say more about that.
That's and Ellie, if you want, I don't know if your camera ready. I'd love you to come in and explain on that. But continue, Beth. You got time, so I don't want.
Interject if I'm running off on somewhere on some tangent. So,
I know you.
Yeah, there'll be tangents. Just expect them. So the other messaging, I love sharing this. Okay, so when I went to, so that was an early on message, right? But then it kept getting reinforced. So one later message, right, in the heat of puberty and all of the lust, which was considered bad, right? You can't even think these things. That's also bad. And so I remember we were taught by a youth pastor we loved. He was so much fun. Maybe like your priest. Like he was so cool about it. We just thought he's awesome. So he taught us all how to handle lust. Get ready. All right.
I want to hear. This should be interesting.
All right. Take a look. These are called lust goggles. And we literally would run around camp with lust goggles on, thinking we were hilarious.
Oh my God.
And I mean, of course we knew it was a joke, but it was another reinforcement that don't touch yourself and have pleasure that your body's, naturally designed. Shut down, like hide the sensations you're having. And then you asked it to make a mess. Yes, it did. I ended up depressed. I ended up in a marriage that we didn't know how to talk about it, because the irony is you get into a committed relationship and all of a sudden you're supposed to turn a switch on and have sex and presumably enjoy it. Maybe, like, no one really talked about that also, but you'd like to, and then it gets awkward and you don't know how to talk about it. So it was a definite mess. And I was in a 12-year primarily sexless marriage. And by sexless, not absolutely void, but mostly void. So that was messy. And then I had to recover. Yeah. I'm just wanting to read what Ellie said here.
If a woman would know what an orgasm was, she would be able to judge the mediocre performance of her spouse. Some controversial comments. Yes, I believe, but that's why we are here.
Love, Ellie. Thank you. And you said, that's not. Can you go back up? I want to read the full thing because Ellie. First of all, thanks so much for chiming in because this is a contentious conversation somewhere, and it's so critical to have. I think all the taboos around masturbation are a way that sexual predators use to commit their crime. And another way to control women's sexuality. And I love it. You're going on to say, like, if a woman has an awareness, know what an orgasm was, she would be able to judge the mediocre performance of her spouse. So you're speaking to a couple of different things, and I love it. Like, let's say that those messages didn't happen as children, and we got to explore our bodies, just like as children explore things tactilely, right? Yep. They explore cups, they explore food, right? And we test it all out. If we had been allowed to explore our bodies tactilely and within safety context and taught how to do all of that in a safe, value, like aligned with our own values, etc., wow, we would have an awareness, which then, yes, we're not starving or we're not misinterpreting things that sexual predators take advantage of. And we'd be able to be in a relatedness with our partners in a way that we could communicate our desires and needs without shame, and they could too, and we could explore together.
Right. I mean, and then when you talk about kids, I remember too being back in grade 8, so I would have been 12, around 13 years old, and going to the library and reading up in the books on sexual myths. And because I had a personal fascination with this, I'd spent time actually studying and going to the library and reading about the facts. But I remember all my friends, and this was girls and boys, all of them had were reading this book on myths, all of them thought a lot of the myths were true. You know, things like you can't get pregnant having sex the first time. You can't get pregnant standing up. You can get pregnant from sitting in a certain toilet seat. So all these myths people had, and both boys and girls, you know, if you didn't know this was, you know, what's correct, what's right, what's wrong, that actually takes you into more trouble than supposedly what was trying to be prevented. So, you know, not only not knowing your own sexuality, but yes, exposed to predators, exposed to maybe having sex and getting pregnant too early because you thought, oh, well, I can't, right? So,
or I shouldn't prepare for. This was one thing that I always loved, because premeditated sin, way worse than just accidental sin. I mean, I'm making these terms up, but like really condoms weren't used. Preventative measures were not, because you weren't intending to have sex. Like truly, you were trying to save. But I mean, then the urges take over, and then you're like, well, why did I want to not do this? This is awesome. So then you end up getting into a situation, and then I remember being in, as a young woman, being in a group with other women. This is when I started. I've been doing counseling for a long time, getting counseling. And a woman had an abortion, and she was dealing with the repercussions of the shame of that, on top of the shame of getting pregnant, on top of the shame of having sex. She was a pastor's daughter. So she was dealing with layers and layers of mess, as you asked, Dr. Vibe. Do these messages cause us mess? Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I remember, yes, I regretted having sex. And then when I was engaged from my first wife, we went through this period. Okay, we won't have sex for a year before we're married because it'll be pretending like we're virgins again. You know? We went a whole year of, we were having sex, and then, okay, we're going to get married, so we're going to stop for a year. And somehow this was going to make it different. And it didn't. Yeah.
So you probably have more thoughts. I can see your brain going there, Dr. Vibe.
I just layer upon layer. It's just very interesting that one of the things, and I don't know, I'm just going to put it out there, this religious shame that you both experienced when you were younger, you're still young, but younger. Do you feel younger?
I'll take the comment. I'll take it.
Yeah, thank you much. Do you feel young people are still exposed to religious shame to the same extent you were?
I will say it depends. Or I shouldn't say it. Some people are, right? If you grow up in a religious household, I think you still are. I know we've had the one conversation, the last workshop we had some younger people in the crowd that definitely were still very much exposed to it from all different religions. There was Christian, there was Muslim, so it definitely exists out there. And I think it's probably even more challenging now because sex is so overt, it's so out there.
I'm just pointing to Ellie's comment because she's saying
hypersexualization is
Ellie is really on fire tonight.
It's true, right? It's out there. It's like in your face, and so some ways it's very easy and very cheapened. And then in the same time, it depends on your household. You can still get that religious impact depending on what you type of household you grow up in. You're still, like my son's still going to Catholic school, and so he gets some of that messaging. Now, my wife and I both have conversations with him about it and openly talk about sex at his level, right? Because he's 9 years old. So a very age-based and level of understanding-based conversation, but it's there. So we try and, I guess, temper what he may be hearing outside, because inside of school he hears very little, right? And especially now with a look from our current government to repeal this whole sex education program that's in place, they're getting less and less education. So it's only what messages you hear from other places.
Okay. Ellie is on fire here.
I know, I'm loving it.
You know, she saying, well, I'm not going to fall, but she goes, and she shares looks like she's having some typing challenges, but I can understand. Yeah, but the clash between house and world is too hard for the young. They have no idea where to position themselves sexually.
Yeah, she was talking about the challenge of the gender conversation, how it can be challenging on a child's psyche, kind of navigating all of that. And I think it is hard for us parents even to have a space to navigate that as a parent, because we generally didn't have a space. We didn't get good parenting. So we're kind of navigating it newly, most of us. So, and you asked a question, are people still getting that kind of affectedness? I think no matter what era we've been in, there's been the degrees of affectedness. And we talked a little bit about this last time, but just to recap, because I think it does help to place ourselves and place our children and then realize there's a context. So there's level 1 degree, I guess, I don't know, but you're in a household that's highly religious. And I think now or past, that would be a similar effect. A similar level of effectiveness. And then I'd really like to talk about what we even mean by affected by religion, because that's a part of how do we actually convert this? I want to make sure we kind of grab onto the conversion piece, because I find it fascinating of converting the shame, which is actually possible to convert it into something soulful and lovely. So there's the degree 1 where you're growing up in a household that's religious and you're in it. Then there's the degree 2 where you're in a community that's highly religious. So in a school, so your son would be, I would say, in level 2, where his grandparent, his school, he's in an environment that has a lot of religion around, but his household not necessarily. And then there's level 3 where there's a religious basis for the society. And that's where I think there's probably the most switching right now, because there is
in North America.
I deal with people in different other countries as well. And most of our religions are based on some input from religion. And now there's some backlash on that, right? So this over-sexualization, that's like a reaction to a lot of repression. So that's like a societal reaction to a lot of repression. But there's still inside of, like you said, in Toronto is pretty progressive sexually, and yet we happen to have a mayor who's now pulling back and reverting to an earlier sex ed curriculum. So there's still a context of religion that we're existing in.
I get you.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the premier. Yeah, he wants to revert things backwards with the religious shame piece, especially with adults. How, I guess Beth will be able to answer this more because she deals with a variety of clients. How much of a challenge is this? Because it's something probably we don't hear a lot about. This is what you do. You share, you coach people in this. How challenging of a situation is this with the many adults in the world, especially in our hypersexual world?
Oh, it's such, we spoke at that summit, and there's an irony of how difficult it is. And it's so prevalent. I actually want to get involved in doing some research around the aspects of religion and sexuality, because I think it's so pervasive and underneath the surface, and it's affecting people in relationship and not in relationship. So those who are not in relationship and they're trying to navigate either dating or relating, right? They may not be trying to get into a relationship, but they're relating with other people intimately, or they're not because they don't know how to navigate it. And I find that what's similar, whether you're in a relationship or not, is there's this, those that are actually in the conversation about having a sex life, because not everyone's showing up at my door because there's no awareness. But those that are having a desire to have a better sex life, there's this challenge of, I really want to go with my desires. And then there's this pushback to their own desires. So it's this pulling in and I want it. And yet, no. So what I see is this very deep rooted, early on planted seed of belief system that if we don't address it, it's running us anyway. And so it's this stop, start. Or you may be in a relationship with someone who has that and you don't know what that's like. So I find this piece, if you are in a relationship with someone who's degree 1 affected by religion, you actually take a lot of that stop, start personally, when in fact, they're just dealing with their own shame, which they don't even agree with anymore intellectually, but it's still living and housed in them. So you got to process that. But then you've got this whole dynamic of partner. And then the person who's feeling shame is like, no, it's not about you. But, oh, no, actually, no, it's probably about you. And it's pretty confusing. And it's pretty prevalent.
I just want to say greetings to I am Ritz Kellogg. Thanks for jumping on here. Ellie makes another great comment here saying, often you desire someone for an hour, but not a minute.
They are naked. Interesting. Huh.
I wish Ellie would jump on.
I feel like there's a conversation there. Yeah.
Ellie goes, I like the hunt.
Okay, no, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like getting up to the point, and then when it gets in front of you, not so interested, or maybe that was the exciting.
Yeah, I think what Ellie's talking about, that's very valid points, and we get into the other topic when we're talking about erotic blueprints and different types, and how it is different for people, and that is part of this, where when you're growing up inside of households, religious background, whatever it is, where there isn't a conversation, there isn't an opportunity to explore what you like, what you don't like. Do you prefer, the chase over the actual act, and there's something in it there, and how can you work with that, when you're a partner or when you're looking for a partner. And that's why we love having these conversations, because you can start exploring and talking about these different things that aren't there. That's the biggest thing I find from with the religious background and religious upbringing. It just was, everything was suppressed.
Yeah.
So you had those feelings, the desires or thoughts, or even for myself, that this thirst and quench for knowledge, yet there wasn't a place to go get it. There's no opportunity for the conversation.
So here's an interesting point, and again, Ellie and I am Ritz Kellogg. If you want to come in, please feel free. With the state of religion these days, especially like everything from people not going to church to the whole controversy in the Catholic Church with priests, etc. How does this make for lack of a better term, the field of soulful intimacy handled? Because if people are in a little bit of a mess because they were brought up and have religious shame, now religion's not even as seriously taken as it was a few years ago. Where is that leaving people when it comes to soulful intimacy? Like, is that even more messy because they don't know what to grab onto unless they come and see Beth?
I love it. I'm going to have an influx of clients, apparently.
I'm doing the promo.
Well, okay, thanks to ask the question, what the heck is soulful intimacy, actually? Because I'm curious, because you speak of it with a framework in it. So I'm curious, Dr. Vibe, what do you think soulful intimacy is?
Well, for me, I guess, putting me on the spot.
My turn to do it. Yay!
Ellie, you are something else with that comment. I'm not going to repeat it, but I know Beth would like that comment, but
that's awesome.
I guess soulful intimacy means intimacy starts from intimacy. First of all, it goes into me see. So you have to be intimate with yourself first.
Absolutely.
So you can be intimate with someone else. Then if it's with someone else, then I'm a firm believer everything starts with friendship. Right? Ellie, you're on fire.
She just said "Viva la masturbation."
That's her.
Wait,
French.
I know, I'm killing it because can you do make it sound good? That's got to sound really good. Viva la masturbation.
Viva la masturbation.
So sorry, Ellie.
No, it's fun, but for me, that's where the intimacy for me starts. Outside of the actual, before the actual.
But what about the soulful piece? Because you're asking a question that related around religion. I'm curious.
Well, that's where I mean when souls meet. So your hearts meet in regard to friendship and relationship. That sort of intimacy. But again, it first starts with intimacy first.
Okay, so this is brilliant. Thank you. I love it, and that's critical because intimacy, where it's really, really authentic, is truly of self first, and coming from a place of grounded and knowing self. Yeah. I want to throw out this piece around mind, body, soul.
Sure.
Because as I've been along this journey of myself, I'm now 44, so I've been on it for a little while. And what I'm coming to see is that what happens with religious shame, and then what you have the opportunity to do, is there's an imbalance in these three pieces of us. So religion tends to elevate the soul and diminish mind a little bit. And then certainly diminishes body. Bodies, tended to be as bad, not to be trusted in most religions. There are some religions that is not the case, or it wasn't the case originally. So I'm speaking a little bit of Hinduism there. I have Hindu friends who, obviously Kama Sutra came from that. But at this moment in time, there are a lot of people who grew up Hindu, and there's a lot of disconnect from body. So what's going on is one of the major effects is a disconnect of these three things, an imbalance. And then when you swing the other way, which Ellie talked about around the over-sexualization, in culture, there's a heightened elevation of body, which soul is diminished. And mine's up there too, depending on where, what your value is, what your culture or family members value, right? And it's soulful intimacy to me is the realigning of this for yourself, because you can bring your soul back in. And that is a connectedness to things outside of us. So we've talked about intimacy with self, intimacy with your partner, but really intimacy with the world and this, if you call it universe, nature. So there's something that is a connectedness to something outside of ourselves that we also get to bring into our sexuality and bring these three parts, mind, body, soul, back together.
So then are you saying then intimacy, well, I can't say intimacy involves the mind, body, and soul. But then again, how many people out there have a balance between their mind, body, and soul? If they haven't taken time
again, so put my address about on the bottom of the. No, we really are so imbalanced.
Yes.
We're so imbalanced.
Yes. I mean, there's definitely that is a big missing. That's what I see today. You asked the question about young people growing up in today's. There's probably a bigger awareness of body, but less of awareness of soul. I mean, and that is, when we say about religion, there's not just bad parts to it. I mean, there is some good, because the religion brings in that connection to the soul, teaches you that part of it, and or can teach it to you. And so with that missing, or an aspect of that missing, either religion or some sort of spirituality, there is no learning about the soul. So that is a part that definitely needs to be all connected in together again.
And I like that I am Ritz Kellogg. That's funny.
I like that. What does intimacy mean to know? And also, as under Beth's orders, I just put up her email address.
Love it. Thank you.
So so respond to that on what does intimacy mean to know?
Oh, I love it. Well, it's literally, thank you so much for that, because it's a knowing. So a knowing of self, a knowing of whoever you're choosing to share yourself with. And then a knowing, why I took it broader, is because there is a knowing of your relatedness into the world. And that's, to me, where I think that there's a soul connects in all of those parts. Now, not everyone has the same longing for that. In fact, that's one of the things I talk about, is that those of us who grew up in religion, so those maybe level 1, level 2 affected us by religion, we actually either if we're called to religion or we grew up in it, we actually are wanting to go deep. There's either it was cultivated in us, or it's a part of who we are. We want to go deep. We want to go to the depth of things. We want to be in a connectedness. And so we actually have the designed capacity to go to that soulful place. Not everyone cares about that to the same degree. And that's okay.
I mean, I know for me, going on the journey of exploring my own sexuality and what it meant, and studying it more, actually brought me to the soulful side. For years, it said, you know what, I grew up Catholic, done with that, not interested in it, and really didn't have a desire to explore any of my spirituality and any of that side of me. But funny enough, going through the journey and going through that my own journey about what's important to me sexually, what do I like, what don't I like, where am I at, what's my feelings, it actually brought me back to exploring that spiritual side and reclaiming my soul, in a sense, reclaiming that sense of deep spirituality and bringing that in along with my journey.
Oh, I think you're mute, Dr. Vibe. I can't hear you.
I am here now.
There we go.
Okay.
So no audio. I am back.
Mhm.
Just wanted to ask, when did both of you break the religious shame to soulful intimacy?
Oh, good question. Has it been done yet?
Yeah,
Has
it?
the shame been broken? This is the actual precursor question.
Yep.
Okay, I love the question. So,
Well, I don't have a white collar on. Sorry.
oh, you don't want confessions?
No confessions today.
Maybe for our final conversation, I'll have a white collar.
Do it, can you? Or a Pope thing, one or the other. I don't care. Like something. Yeah.
Oh, well,
religion.
you know,
That'd be awesome.
Joking aside, there have been people who have approached saying you should be a minister.
Oh yeah, you have a great. You have the personality.
You could totally rock that.
Preach it.
Reclaim. That's right.
No, thank you.
He's got the hallelujah.
You're not going to hear Pastor Vibe. Sorry, that ain't gonna.
Never say never. Never.
Well, highly doubt it.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer your question totally indirectly because I love doing that. It's so much fun.
That's your style.
My specialty.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question? I love it.
So the question is, when did both of us break
from religious shame to have soulful intimacy?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. It's such a powerful question. So I'm going to say this, that I talk about us having journeys, sexual journey from birth to death, how we relate and exist in our bodies and relate to our bodies and share our bodies. And then we have a spiritual journey, or a soulful journey, actually is my preference to call it, from birth to death as well, because we're souls in body form. And so what I find is happening is that these are they're converging and then they're separating. These journeys intertwine, they connect. So for my hand, there we go. Okay. Woo, psychedelic. Okay. So what I find of those who have an awareness, because not all of us are aware. I mean, I'm sure all of us on this call have an awareness, but there are a lot of people in religion who are not aware that they have a shame that's affecting their intimacy. But once you have an awareness, there's an intersection of, oh, I have that shame. And then you got to kind of grapple with that. Because generally we're brought up quite young in religion, it's quite low in the layer of beliefs.
It's deep.
It's very, very deep.
Yeah.
And so then you go through life and you start, okay, well, for me at one point you shared, you know, there's a pulling away from what I believed. In my 20s, I really grappled for a long time about this. And there's a point where I really wanted to like force my belief because it was so terrifying to let go of the foundation that was like my world. And so that was another convergence, right? When I let go of soulful journey and then I was more on a sexual journey. So, and then back to a point of, oh, when I awoke further, what you were talking about in my sexual journey, I realized, oh, my soul is wanting feeding here. Oh, there's a feeding for my soul. And it started to open up my hunger and my capacity for soul. So I'm saying that because it's a lifelong journey of grappling with the shame that was embedded in me very, very young. And what I would say is now, so over the last I've been working on shame, but not related to sex, but I'm working on shame for years and years in my own life, but working on sexual shame for about 6 years. And over that time, there hit a point where I realized I knew how to manage shame in the moment. And to me, that's a mastery of discovering when shame comes up, how do I not let it block my pleasure in that moment? And so I haven't broken shame. I haven't broken shame, but I actually have a mastery of how to actually identify shame, recognize it, say, okay, shame, thanks so much. You're so in my way of pleasure right now. And I can actually move it aside and start every time you actually look at shame and speak it, especially, and speak it and you share it, you'll dissipate the power of it. And so for me, there was over the last 2 years, I would say was really the crux of when, if we had when the tides go out of ocean, so the tide goes out. So the tide has gone out for me around the mass amounts of shame around my sex life, around liking sex, period, all of that. what's left behind from the waves are puddles and pockets and even quite large pools of water. And we have to really be aware that those are going to exist. There's going to be pockets of shame, and you're going to happen upon them, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I thought I dealt with my shame, and here's my shame again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can speak. For me, a big part of dissipating was after my first marriage ended, was dealing with, okay, I'm now divorced, right? Which is a big deal in the Catholic, well, a lot of religions, but in Catholic Church, I'll speak to specifically, you know, I'm divorced. And I remember my mom and my aunts, they were happy that I was no longer in this marriage, but they wanted me to have an annulment to say the marriage really didn't exist. So there was a lot of shame and dealing with my own feelings around that. Okay, well, do I want to have an annulment to be more accepted back into the Catholic Church? But then does that mean, you know, where does that place my daughters? Because, you know, I had 2 daughters out of this marriage. So there was a lot of that I had to process through. It'll be 15 years ago now. But, and then as I started going down further after because that marriage, as I shared the last time series, was what I'd classify as a sexless marriage. So when you start exploring, okay, what is important to me? Why is my sexuality important to me? And start exploring that, then you get an opportunity to. So through that process, it just went less and less. And I love your analogy, Beth, of that tide going out and leaving these pools that you don't even know is there. And one hit me the other day because a friend of mine came and he brought one of our old yearbooks from high school. And I'm looking through it and I'm seeing the picture of that priest I mentioned earlier, who I dearly loved, a man, and dearly loved everything taught about. But boom, that feeling again of that shame from what he said about masturbation. And so, okay, but now, as you're saying, there's more of awareness of it. Okay, let that come up, deal with it, and move on. So the short answer is it never dissipates, but done a lot of work to make the big part, make that tide go back out. I love that analogy.
And it's interesting because the work around the erotic blueprint for me was a bit of icing on the cake, because I've been doing a lot of work around sexual shame, working through a process I call 5 stages to pleasure. But when I got the certification around how to actually discover our erotic blueprint, that's our pleasure types, basically. There's 5 pleasure types, and then sexual stages and blocks to pleasure, etc. So this whole thing builds your blueprint. And what I loved about that, I know we've talked about this lots, is that it put languaging, first of all, so you can start communicating more effectively for yourself and just say, oh yeah, that's what that is.
Right.
But it also started to make it like, oh, right, this is a thing. This isn't bad, wrong. So that languaging all of a sudden just started to make the shame just not even be a thing, because, oh, this is a pleasure type. Right. Okay. So I loved it. Who was it? Was it Ellie who was saying about, I like the hunt. Right. So that the energetic type. Okay. So there's energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, which is the person who enjoys the taboo or the naughty. It's not necessarily BDSM, etc. Yeah, do whatever. And then the 5th is the shapeshifter, who plays in all of these areas, and that they all kind of feed together. And so the energetic, Ellie, I'm speaking to you on this because the energetic may speak to you that it likes anticipation. There's actually something in the waiting for the excitement of that's actually the pleasure.
Yes.
And so oftentimes I find that someone in a relationship, when one person is an energetic pleasure type and another is either a sexual, and the sexual is the person who's like, I can't be bothered with foreplay. What are you doing? Let's get to orgasm. Boom, let's go. Right. So when you have types that don't understand that they have a certain pleasure type, it's just what it is, then there's a lot of judging of self or the other. So you can hear the capacity to build upon the shame that we got from religion, because we just don't understand pleasure.
Yes.
And we were never taught pleasure. And so now as adults, we can start to learn pleasure. I'm always curious, how can I translate this into kid language so that they understand as they grow up, not just safety and consent, which are essential things to learn around coming of age. I've got 2 daughters, one's 11 and one's 8. But how do they also embrace that they get to have pleasure, and that's not bad and wrong, and please choose so it's aligned with your values and your life's intentions. So there's lots to teach. But anyway, so that's a piece that I find has really dropped for myself personally, and then those who I've worked with, drop that shame just right down. It's almost like it just took a chunk off the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's something I want to bring up, but that may extend this for a while. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to hold it off conversation, but
we could do a teaser.
Well, we can do a teaser. Yes, I was going to say we can do a teaser.
Let's do anticipation for Ali and those potential
on the hunt. Yeah.
On the hunt. The hunt.
So, because Bryan mentioned that his first marriage was a sexless marriage. And I'm just looking at an article here written a number of years ago by a Christian counselor. 4 myths about sexless marriages explored with Christian couples counseling.
Ooh, send me that link, please.
Yeah, so I'm gonna save it for our next conversation.
Yeah, love it.
It's very interesting, and there's another article here about dysfunctional religion versus a spirituality that builds intimacy and community.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I really wanted to address that. Can I take a minute? Okay.
Take your time.
Okay, because where are we at for time? Because this I also would love.
I told you guys take as much time as you want. I'm good. It's more you.
That's like for hours.
Okay, so well, I'm gonna cap both of those conversations. I like this, Ellie. I need food, but I'm stuck to my screen.
Yay!
Okay, so I do want to talk about this more in depth next week as well. And I love that you brought up the context of a sexless marriage and all that. So yeah, that'll be so much fun to talk about next week. So
I'll send the article. You can start with it. Send the article.
Okay, good. And this is going to be a second teaser. No food for you, Ellie. Okay. Okay, Kevin Gates said it's best when he's sad.
If you feel shame in anything you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay.
Ooh, I would love to have that discussion. Okay, we're going to be going forever. Okay, so we won't do that tonight, but I'd love to talk about that. That's a really cool quote. Okay, so here's the thing that you just twigged, and I really wanted to capture this as we're.
Before you go any further, Ellie says you owe her pizza now.
Nice. It's yes. Okay. So the quote that you said, you were looking at something and it was talking about how religion can set us up for intimacy. And so this is what I love. It's so important and easy to talk about how religious shame has shut us down, how religion has affected us. Right. To shut us down, have us shamed, all of this, messed our lives up. We talked about how does this make you messy, all of this stuff. Wow, how does that make you messy? Okay. Anyway.
Did you just what Ellie replied with?
What?
Yeah.
Said if you're going to sin, do it all the way. I love the comments. You guys are awesome tonight. Okay, so then, this is the other piece. So it's important to look at that, bring it to light, because that's often, we don't talk about this conversation. We don't talk about that shame.
Hey, Curtis.
and that's actually, like we were saying earlier, if you bring to light the shame, it starts to dissipate. Okay. The other aspect of religion, of being affected by religion, is there's actually a lot of positivity. Right. And one of them I've already mentioned is that we are bred or nurtured or we align with religion because we're this way as a person ourselves anyway, to go deep, to go to depth and find rich depth in our connections with others, in analyzing things and experiencing the world. So it'd be interesting to talk for a minute about the effects that actually enrich us.
Yeah, because I know for me, after going through a tantric course, and I'll just give a little snippet into this, right after that, I had this great sexual experience with my wife where I had what's described as a Kundalini orgasm. And for me, going into this space felt like I was looking at the face of God in this, in the middle of this deep experience. And I don't think without a religious or spiritual background, I'd have no context to be able to understand, describe, even put a name to what was happening to me. So there is a lot that I get from that religious background on the positive side, being able to take it to another place, even to now say, okay, I'm ready to go on a deeper spiritual journey. What does that mean? What does that mean exploring it? So all of that, I feel, when I look at, I compare it to my wife right now, who doesn't have the religious background and upbringing, there isn't that depth on the spirituality. Not that she's not a spiritual person, that get around, but that the words and finding it and going deep with it is not the same. So there is some really positive that you can attach to it as well. Yeah.
Well, and so I'm curious if people want to share. I have a problem with pizza. Yeah, we should wrap it up. I would love to talk about that more next time. We're gonna lose Ellie soon, and she's like part of our lifeline here. I'm loving her. I'm loving having her comments. So.
Ellie's shutting us down, so we'll we'll get to the end soon. I think that we've got more than enough to do another. Well, we have 3-part series, but I think we're gonna go further than that, because just the last 2 conversation topics are whole topics in themselves.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
They're whole topics in themselves. So what we're going to do is, on behalf of Ellie, we're going to start winding down our conversation.
And we're all going to dial the pizza, like for pizza. That's what we're going to do. Yeah.
Like there's a conflict in myself right now between my mental and my stomach.
I love it. Go with your desire.
Bryan or B2, any final words you'd like to share with the audience before we let you go?
Oh, I just felt great gratitude for the opportunity to talk about this and for the conversations that are being chatted about. Like, really, to me, the biggest gift that gets to be had for me, for all of us, is to talk about the effects of religion on our intimate lives. What could soulful intimacy be? Because I do truly... I see it and I believe it in my own life and in the people I work with, that when we actually can, master an ability to put this shame aside, let that shame dissipate, what shows up is actually a life of pleasure. And yes, we have great sex as a part of it, but it's actually way broader than that. And to me, that's when beauty will shine in this world. And it might sound a little Pollyanna, but hey.
So just to add on what Beth was saying, when she says we have great sex, Bryan and Beth are not married.
I knew that was going to come up.
No, but I had
to run that across the bottom.
Okay, they are not married.
No. And we're not.
We're not together. We're not intimate.
No.
Exactly. Bryan, any final words from yourself?
I think I've echoed what Beth is saying, and I love, for me, it's having these conversations and then being able to take it to the next generations, to our children. And so it's not growing up in a world of mixed messages, right? Getting to this world where we can talk about it and have that, understand what soulful intimacy means, because it will mean something. Loved your definition for yourself, Dr. Vibe, and it means different things for different people, but it is that connectedness between mind, the body, and soul. So, I love the conversation, and thank you to everyone that's here on the call with us tonight, or in the video with us, or podcast, whatever you call this thing, sharing here with us, just loving it all. So thank you.
No problem. I'm going to ask anyone if they want to jump in real quick before we wind it down. Curtis said, that was going to be my next question. So
that's what we get.
I'm going to give a minute for anyone who wants to jump in before we end the live portion. Myself, I'm Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, 2018 Innovation Award winner on behalf of the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And people may ask, how did you meet these wonderful people? Well, we met at the Men and Masculinity Summit that was back in November.
It's almost a month ago now. Oh, it was month today. And
before that, I had the opportunity of interviewing both of them. And if you want to hear something really crazy, go to my site. Listen, the first time we got together.
That was fun.
It was totally fun.
That was out of bounds. That was really out of bounds.
Yeah.
But there's no one else to jump in. I'm just going to end it off. If you want to find out anything about Dr. Vibe, just go to the website, drvibeshow.com. You'll get about 2,000 audio conversations and how about 500 video conversations like this.
Crazy.
And looking forward to, they will be back next month. I'd like to wish everyone a happy holiday season. I do have a few more conversations booked before the holiday season, but if we don't see you, make it happy, safe. Be soulful with everyone.
Soulful. Yeah.
Soulful with everyone over the holidays. Yeah. So I end up to say, live your life as a dream. If you can dream, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And also, you need to I'm just going to put it up right now. It's one of my new taglines. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. So from me and B2.
B squared or B2. B2. B2 sounds better. Yeah.
All right. And we're going to stop the broadcast here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. They'll be back next month and probably after that. Be well and keep the faith, everybody.